What's up, my beloved? Y'all, welcome back to Purpose Sisters Joyrides with yours truly, Tracy Philippa. Now, I don't know what I was thinking over the last 4 weeks when I've been recording, but y'all, subscribe, like, and share the channel. Y'all, be part of the family, the Purpose Sisters family. And y'all, this is episode number 5. Y'all, 5 weeks already. So this lovely lady that I'm gonna have on today, she is not just a mother, but she's a published author, and she has been through it. Y'all, all of us have been through, heartbreak and pain. Some of us through divorce and separation, but we have learned to overcome. We are more than conquerors, like the word of God says. And y'all, she's gonna share her story. She's gonna talk about a book today, and she just happens to be the mother of one of my best friends, Trey. So I am just so excited for you guys to meet her. So y'all, let's go. Y'all, and she is here. This is none other than
Mistress Evelyn St.Cyr.
Y'all, like I was telling y'all, Evelyn is the mother of one of my dearest friends, Mr. Trey, right? And she was letting me know that she had published a book. And I was like, you know what, I have to bring her on because I feel like our story is kind of similar. And I just wanted to share, give us some insight, some wisdom. So what actually motivated you to write the book? And what is the name of the book?
The name of the book is Out of the Pockets of Pain. So, and what motivated me to write this, my husband and I, we were going through it. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I left the marital home. Mm-hmm. It wasn't because of another woman. Mm-hmm. It was because of everything else.
Everything.
The me doing everything, feeling like I was alone, feeling like I was doing here by myself, and then not only that, I had allowed the enemy to come in, because for me, I was that I didn't realize at that time that I was that pillow that everybody looked forward to, especially him. Mm-hmm. When things were not going right, he knew that, hey, I wouldn't have this.
Yeah.
And I really didn't realize that until after the fact. At that time, I just felt like I was taking on too much. Mm-hmm. So anyway, after I decided to leave, things started to go downhill. So I said, you know what? And mind you, he begged me to stay. But I was adamant that, hey, I'm leaving, and that was it. Mm-hmm. So after about a year, give or take, a little more, he was behind me, and I said, you know what, nah. And then he stopped. Mm-hmm. And he found someone, and then the tables had turned. I was now then saying, hey, let's make this work. He said, no, Evelyn, it's too late.
Oh, wow.
So during that time right there, it pushed me towards God. It pushed me to the point whereas, hey, because I had forgotten everything. There were times when I would be in church, mm-hmm. and on WhatsApp. So it was just a phase I was going mm-hmm. through. But at this particular time here, I felt suicidal. I felt down, alone, like it was just me. My kids, I pushed away everyone. I lost a best friend. I was going through, and I think I was being selfish at a point in time. But then, and I remember my mother-in-law, who's passed now, October make a year. Mm-hmm. And before her passing, she said, Evelyn, she said, you're going to write a book. And your book should name Out of the Crucibles. But I said, I wasn't feeling that.
Yeah, okay.
So, how I came up with the name, because at that time I was going through so much pain. It felt like my heart was about to explode. And I said, you know what? And as a matter of fact, as I remember one day, I can't remember if it was a Sunday or a Saturday. I think it was a Saturday. I went out by South Beach Beach. That was actually my place, my place of worship, mm-hmm. my place of everything. That's the place where I went to talk to God. And I felt like I couldn't do it anymore. And I remember I went there and I cried. I hollered like a baby. And before that, I was talking to him about something anyhow. And he said, Evelyn, wherever you, he said, where are you? So I told him where I was, and he came. And we were talking and whatever the case may be. And I remember during our conversation, I said, I got it. Out of the Pockets of Pain. And that's where the name of my book came from. When I was going through probably the hardest part of my life. And I wrote this book in about maybe 2 months, 3 months.
Wow.
So I knew it was the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Because I have the name of my next book and I don't know where to start.
No.
So the only reason with the book, it was being critiqued, it was being reworded, whereas subject verb agreement and all of that. I had a lecturer, old college lecturer of mine. She did the corrections, whatever needed to be corrected and everything. So it took about maybe 2 years before I published it. But nonetheless, I got it done. And what this book is about is my walk from me realizing, which was after the fact, that the enemy had come into my marriage and I did not even realize how. And then I had to do a lot of cleaning up in my personal life, my social life. I had to do a lot of cleaning up. And then I had to close some doors that I did not want to close, doors that were very hard for me to close, but nonetheless, I closed those doors. Yes. And in closing those doors, I realized that you needed support. And I didn't want, to be honest with you, nobody really did, to help me. Because I felt as if it was my mess, so I had to clean it up myself. Not realizing, even at that time, that, hey, you still can't clean up your own mess. Only God could help you do it.
Yeah.
So I had a prayer life out of this world. The Holy Spirit woke me up religiously on time. 12 a.m., 3 a.m., 6 a.m. Sometimes I used to be so tired. I say, okay, God, I can do it. And I prayed, I fasted, I prayed. But at that time, to be honest, I was doing it to get my marriage back in order. And what I realized after the fact was that, hey, it was for you to get a closer relationship with God. It had nothing to do with your marriage.
Yes.
And I didn't know that. And it's almost as if I was like, what am I doing this for? It's not working. It's not. Every time it seemed at that time that, hey, we were getting somewhere. The enemy just slapped me in the face. And we went further. It's like everything got pushed further. But as right now, he and I are closer now than we were when we were actually together. So because sometimes he would have situations where I say to him, hey, I'm going on the scene, pray for me. Because he's a police officer.
Okay.
And he knows that, hey, in spite of, I have his back. And him and his girlfriend, they live together and everything. And now, because at first, we were. But now I see her, I hail her, and things like that, and one big happy family.
But that's what, that speaks a lot. It speaks a lot, because I've gone through the same thing kind of. Right. When it comes to my divorce and being in a, somewhat very hostile relationship, and me not knowing if we would have ever gotten to that friend place. Because of course, when it's when you're going through it, it's horrible. Yes. You literally, you're like, how on earth did I walk down the aisle and pledge my love to this person, and right now they are my worst enemy? It's like when people say there is a fine line between love and hate, I now understand what that means. I've lived that. And it's been about 2 years since we broke up and we and got divorced. And our relationship now is great. Awesome. We co-parent well. There's no hard feelings. Both of us have moved on, and it's like there's a peace, that has come into my life. So tell me, when you say the enemy creep in to the marriage, in what ways did that happen?
I started almost picking on him for everything. Mind you, he wasn't all bad, and I wasn't all good. Yeah. So,
that's big. That honestly, that's really big. Because people don't like to
admit
their fault.
No, he wasn't all bad. Because mind you, if he had money, Evelyn was gonna get her share and more. So that's what he did.
Yeah.
And like the church, that was a part of the way I allowed the enemy to come in. Because when we were going through, they didn't say, well, hey, come in, let's counsel. They spoke negative of him. And at that time, I encouraged it and I fested on it, and I didn't realize that, hey, this was a part of the plan of the enemy. Because the first thing about it is the person that was mentoring me wasn't even, no, they were married, but they weren't together with their husband.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, hey, now later on I realized, why did I allow someone who was going through something and it didn't end successfully to give me advice?
Oh.
And I find that that's a mistake that a lot of persons make. They get advice from persons who either has never been through that situation, or they have no idea. They hypothetically speak or hypothetically give advice when, if you have never been sick and God has never healed you, how can you then say that God is a healer? You have to have, I mean, in my opinion, you have to have that personal relationship, that personal experience that, hey, I know what God can do.
Yes.
So let me give you an example. I'm anemic, and for the past maybe 2 years, I've been struggling with being tired so often. So I would literally walk around with my 3S tonic, and I realized it was getting worse, having no idea what it was about. And it got to the point where if I showered, I felt like I was running a marathon.
Oh, wow.
And he said, Ronaldo, he said, Evelyn, you need to go to a doctor. I said, you know what? Then my kids, Mama, you need to go to the doctor. I said, okay, the hell with it. And on July 4th, I went to Montague Medical Center. And I said, hey, will you come for? I just want a physical. I'm saying just to shut everyone's mouth up. And believe it or not, the doctor at the time, he said, your liver doesn't feel normal. And I'm hearing something. So he said, hey, go to the Fort Terrace. And I went there. Listen to me. When they said $500 and something, I was like, wow, but this is my health. Went there, and they were getting some conflicting information, diagnosis, whatever. So they sent me to PMH. They said, okay, you need to let them check it sounds like fluid is in your lungs. You need to let them check it. They did all the check and everything. Everything was perfect. I mean, they did blood work except the fact that my blood level was of 3.6 at that time. So, which is very bad because, our female's blood level is supposed to be like anywhere between 10.75 to 12.
So you were like extremely low.
Yes. And so they said, hey, we have to admit you. What made it worse was that I was in A&E for about 3 days.
Just in there.
A&E. My friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, found a gurney for me, so I was able to sleep on that for 2 nights. And on the last night, they said, hey, I noticed they came to me and they just rushed me out of there and they put me in trauma, not trauma, in chest unit. So I'm like, hey, what's going on? Your blood level dropped to 2.1. So I'm starting to panic, because the thing about it is, I'm A negative.
I went to give blood. I know I was A, but I was like, I didn't know which one I was. And then when I went and I checked with my doctors, it was A positive. I was like, oh my God.
And the thing, they had no negative, A or O, because that's the only thing I could receive. And they had no negatives. And so everyone that gave positive, it was almost as if it wasn't no use, because you couldn't use it. No. So what my husband did, he went out on a manhunt for A negative and O negative, because how I ended up on the ward, he had a friend and he spoke to her and she did everything to get me on that ward. And she said to him, you guys gotta prepare for the worst, because if you don't find this blood, she is going to die. And the only thing I can say is, but God, you had police officers stopping that were A negative or O negative, stopping off their shifts, during their shifts, I should say, to come in to give blood.
And I just want to just give a little bit perspective to this. This is recent.
This was
This was recent. This is like in the last maybe month or two.
July 4th. This is between July 4th and July. I came to the hospital July 11th.
Jesus.
So between that time period. And listen to me. And not only that, after they give the blood, they have to screen it to make sure that no like type of anything.
Diseases.
Exactly. And I had to take 3 sets of transfusions. It got to the point my hands are small.
Oh my God.
So my veins are very, very small. My veins were swollen. They had about 6 different places where they had to put the drip up. And it got to the point when the doctor took the last set of blood because they had to test it and everything. And I started to cry. I said, this is so painful. I cannot take any more of the sticking. I want to go home. And I cried like a little girl because I was just tired. And when they came back to me that morning, I remember the doctor said, hey, your blood count is up to 9.75. Listen to me.
Wow.
I have never praised God and thanked God like that before. And from the time that I came out, it felt like I could run a marathon. I mean, it was just awesome. So all I can say is God is definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, a healer. But also, we as women, we need to take care of our bodies because I was just going. And now I can go more. But I take it, and of course I'm on medication.
What does that say?
It says healing, the best way to increase faith in healing is to go through experience. That's so true.
And literally, this was, I don't know, God has just a way, because this is on the 25th of last month. Wow. And like, he literally just said, just write that.
Right.
Just write that.
Wow.
And you literally just came here and just said that. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and back to my book. Basically, this book has, in writing it helps me to heal.
Yeah.
In writing it helps me to forgive. And what really, really put the icing on the cake was when my mother-in-law died. And I said to myself, and I remember my husband sending me a text. He said, hey, she's going to be there. And my first response was, I'm not coming. So I thought about it and I said, you know what? I'm not coming for her or him. I'm coming to pay my respects to who I consider the best mother-in-law you could ever ask for. When I went by her house, which was because she's passed now, I went straight in her room. Yeah. I made in her bed. I went in her pot. This was as if it was my mother. That's how she treated me. Wow. So I said, let me go, and I paid my last respects. And I did something that I never thought I would have ever done. Where there was a limo. In total, it's 6 kids, 5 boys and 1 daughter. And of course, she's the baby. She's very, very spoiled. So we had a limo for ourselves. So when he came, everyone met at the house. So he made sure that everyone was set and everything, and then he went in a limo with his girlfriend. So at the time, when we went to the church, I came out and I hugged him. And I went to extend my hand to shake her hand. I hugged her. And I said, after the funeral, we need to talk. So it was at that point, I made peace with myself and I made peace with her. And I said some things that were very, very nasty. And of course, she retaliated. But at the end of the day, I was the bigger woman. And person say, hey, the wife is apologizing to the sweetheart. No, it wasn't like that. It was a woman apologizing to another woman. And that's how I looked at it. So at the end of the day, like I said, we're best friends. And my book, it talks about letting go. It talks about cleaning up. It talks about forgiveness, about closing doors, about pain and how we process pain, things like that. So my advice, to be honest with you, to anyone who's going through, never look to the church. That may sound wrong, that may sound hard. I'm telling you, always look to God. Don't you ever look to the church. Because I remember I thought that And they always used to say, oh, it's the church and then your family. But then when I thought about it, no, it's God, then your family, and then the church.
Yeah.
So someone's like, oh, God is the church. No, God is not the church.
No, God is not the church. God is God.
Exactly. And at that, listen, my eyes have been opened so wide after the fact. And that's the sad part, after the fact.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest things that happened with me and my ex too was, I remember the first time, I think we were like maybe a year or something into our marriage, and things were so horrible. And I reached out to the church where we went at that point. And, you know, I went there looking for help. You know, I was like, listen, I can't do this. I don't know what's happening, but this is it. And I remember that it's just a kind of, I am one person, I can tell you, I am healed from the situation that happened with us. But there is something that pricks my heart whenever I talk about it, and it's the same situation where when I went to the church, I went to the pastor about a year into my marriage, and I was like, listen, things, and I need help. I don't know what to do. And they were like, okay, you know, definitely, I'm going to come to your house, and you know what I mean? And we're going to talk through it and everything, right? And listen, I went and I cooked a spread because he's like, he's going to come to our house that night. I was so excited. I was like, good, the man of God coming in, the dinner. You know, we're going to finally get the help that we need.
Right.
And I went home and I cooked a meal and I cleaned and everything. And nobody ever showed up to the house. I didn't know that, you know, at that point, I think my ex had told me he couldn't make it, and no one said anything to me. And I literally just waited, and no one ever showed up for me. And it wasn't until like months and months later that my ex-sister-in-law like went to the pastor's wife, and she's like,
what happened?
You even, and it took his sister.
Wow.
Going to be like, why would y'all just left her hanging like that? You know? And I will always remember that. And that, I'm somebody who grew up with church hurt. I've been in a situation where like I've gotten sexually assaulted in church.
Wow.
Like as a young teenager. And have that church not do anything about it. Have me come back to youth meeting and that same person that did it is sitting right there with no consequences, you know? And so I completely, like, when you say don't go to the church, it's not that I'm like, oh, don't say that. No, because I know what it's like to be hurt in that way, and I know what it's like when you go to the people that should be able to help.
Exactly.
They should be able to pray with you. The Bible says, confess your sins to one another so that we can pray for each other and be healed. You know what I mean? And not just sin, but your day-to-day, the struggles that you deal with. If it's anyone you should be able to go through, it's your brothers and sisters in Christ. And when they drop the ball, it's like...
You know, I remember I said to a pastor of mine, when my husband was behind me, I said, I'm going to go back to my husband. And a pastor at the time said, Evelyn, no, why are you going back? And you should not go back. And I was so blinded by the fact that, I don't know, it was almost as if the enemy had this world over my eyes. And I remembered, and like, at that time, this pastor used to make these strange, weird comments to me. I thought it was sexually, to be honest. And I remember telling my second son, and he was like, why don't you approach him about it? I said, or even, you know, go to the point, speak to his wife. I said, no, I don't want to do that because, you know, I just didn't want to cause any problems.
Yeah.
So I just left it alone. But I've had a church hurt.
Crazy.
I have had church hurt, and it's not good.
So yeah. All right, we are back, y'all. Today ain't nothing open. Ain't nothing open. So I gotta go home and make my own coffee. But anyhow, so what would you want people to take away from your story and from the book?
My advice slash what you can take away from my book. Always put God first. And I believe that if you marry someone, it has to be some qualities in that person that cost you to marry them in the first place. So sometimes some marriages I believe that were not meant to be, to be honest with you. And because a lot of times persons will say that, hey, you know, who God put together. Sometimes God ain't
put you together.
Yeah,
I know.
Sometimes God didn't put everybody together.
Put yourself together.
Exactly. So the ones that God did put together, fight for your marriage. And I think for me, I didn't fight for my marriage. And that's one of the things that up to this point here, it eats me. Okay. Because I did not fight for my marriage. And but fight for your marriage. When you put God first, you will know where you're going wrong, when you're going wrong. If you go to the church, they're going to give you what they think. They're not going to give you what the Bible says or what God says. God doesn't believe in divorce. Or God, not that he doesn't believe. The Bible doesn't say. Right, it speaks about exactly. But like I said, put God first and fight for your marriage. Now, in my situation, and it sounds crazy, but I always tell people, if my husband had another woman, he was good, because I did not know. And we went out together. I had his bank card, the password. When he gets paid, I knew what he made. So I knew where every penny went. So if he had another woman, she probably took care of him.
That is very, very possible.
But if she took care of him, I didn't see it. So, I mean...
These not so streets.
But your marriage is worth fighting for. In total, I've known him for 2022, right? 22 years.
Jesus.
We've been out of the 22 years, we've been married, living together 10 years.
Okay.
But we have been legally married, I think, 17 years? Legally married.
Wow.
Yeah, because we've been separated about 7 years.
Wow. Yeah. Child. I fight for mine. I could say I fought for my marriage until I didn't want it no more. I think, you know, like you said, like, you were very transparent. You say you feel like you didn't fight for your marriage. And I think for me, on the other hand, I felt like I fought until the nails fell off.
Wow.
And that was the most devastating thing that I've ever gone through in my life.
Wow.
You know, and I pray that I never ever experience that level of pain again. And, you know, I've come to the realization that, you know, because I'm not gonna lie, when I was married, I was the perfect wife. Listen to me, nobody gonna tell me.
No, I wasn't a perfect wife.
I really thought that, you know, I was doing everything, you know, that I could have done to be a good wife. Now that I have, you know, had time to grow and mature and therapy, I realized a lot of times I was trying to love someone the way I wanted to be loved and not love him the way he felt loved. And I think if I had one thing that I would do over, I would have try to learn his love languages a whole lot better and love him the way he would have received love the best, you know. And that's one thing that I would take away, because I just finished writing a book as well. I can tell you the name of that yet. But there is actually like a part in the book where I literally write a whole letter to him.
Wow.
Of apology.
Oh, wow.
And that was something that God was really like, I mean, like, he ring me, like, amen, ring me out. And, you know, it was, I never thought that I would reach that level of humility, you know, and be able to see all of the things that I did wrong, you know, and because there was a lot of betrayal, a lot of abuse, there was a whole lot of things that was going on in the marriage, and you know, I had to take my the responsibility for my part, you know, in all of that. And for me, it's like, marriage is sacred. No one gets married to get divorced.
Exactly.
You know, no one walks down the aisle and say, I can't wait to divorce you in 5 years. Nobody does that. But you know, unfortunately, it happened. And I think conversations like this help people who are going through it, you know, because at the end of the day, like, we feel, when we going through it, we feel like, number one, we feel like we're the only one.
Yes.
We
and
feel
no one
alone.
else understands. And,
no one. You ain't been through what I've been through. You ain't had my husband. You ain't had my wife. You don't know the dynamic of our situation. But you would be so surprised how many people have gone through the exact same thing.
I agree.
And you know, I tell people sometimes, I'm like, listen, because like I have women who reach out to me, and they want advice about how do I, you know, navigate this new, you know, situation. I'm going through this divorce, or they're like, should I get a divorce? Like, first of all, I can't answer that for you. And when I find people in that space where they are, where they're exploring whether or not they want to do that, I'm like, I'm the worst person to talk to.
But that's a mistake we make. We expect persons to have the answer for us. We look to all the wrong place. And then another thing I realized too, where we watch so many love stories, so many soap operas, we want our lives to be a particular way.
Fairy tale.
But you have to understand, I'm an individual and he's an individual, and all of these are the things that I learned after the fact. We're both two separate individuals he grew up with two parents in the home. I grew up with one in the home.
Wow, okay.
So all of these things are things that when we come together, it's almost like a clash. And then also what I realized is that you said something similar to it, you have to learn your spouse. And I thought I knew him, and well, actually I did know him, but it was at a particular point I just wasn't willing to accept it anymore. You know, because we came from him walking out of his pants and leaving it there, and me going behind him and picking it to the point where I said, you know what, the hell with it. Yeah. You gotta move your pants. And we get to the point where as he started cleaning up on Sundays, and this is why I say he wasn't all bad. On Sundays, as he had he used to have the weekends off, so when I'm at church, he'd be cooking. So and when he went back on the shifts or whatever, he would cook in the night. If he's working midnight, he would cook in the morning. And then it got to the point whereas he got lazy again. So when I row and I make noise, just like a child, he would do it for 2 or 3 days. Then he went back to his old ways. And something else I remember. In Ephesians, where it says how your husband loves your wife, husband loves your wife like Christ liked the church, and then it says wives be submissive to your husband. A lot of them use that submission part of it, but guess what? If you love me unconditionally, I will automatically submit to you. So it isn't a beating over the head. Submit. No, if you love me the way Christ loved the church, I will. I would have no problem.
We have no problem.
And that's what men don't understand. You know?
They love that word submission.
Yes.
You're not submissive, you know. And I'm like, and I really need something to submit to.
Okay.
Because a lot of times y'all ain't giving me nothing to follow.
That's it.
You know, you want to be a leader and then don't know how to lead. And I'm like, you know, I'm to this point because I really, like, I was so hard, and I was like, I was a man. Like, by the time as I got divorced, I was a man. And that was one of the things that God talked to me about. He's like, no, you need to soften up. You need to become a lot more feminine. Like, God was like, you need to wear bright clothes. Like, you are too hard, Tracy. And I had to learn to be feminine again. I had to learn to be soft again. I had to learn to allow a man to open up a door for me and expect that he would do it. You know, I had to learn that I don't like the stigma, like when they're like superwoman, you know? I'm no superwoman. Like, I'm not I'm not Miss Independent.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't into that. I will be independent now because I am alone, like I'm single, you know what I mean? So I have to take care of business. I gotta get my bills paid. I need to make sure my son's good and all that good stuff. But as far as me in a relationship, because I always grew up with that, you know, like my mom, it was someone who I always saw, like she had to, she always had to take the lead. You know what I mean? With so many different things. And so when I grew up and I watched that and I'm like, and I take on that type of personality.
Yes.
And I feel like I took a lot of the masculinity away from my husband. Because I was like, I know everything. I know how this supposed to go. I know how I supposed to cook. I know how I supposed to clean. I know how you supposed to be loved. And even and it's like I feel for the most part, like yes, I felt like I gave my all to my marriage, but at the same time, I feel like I did not allow him the space to lead.
I agree with you. We make that mistake sometimes. For me, I remember my husband was used to, his father was a taxi driver. His mom, she's always been in the educational system. And when his father gets off at midnight or so, his mom would, first of all, when she cooked, she took his food up separately and put it there. So when he gets off at midnight or shortly after, she would heat his food up, have it on the, while he's in the shower, he'll have it on the table, and she sat to the table while he ate, and he used to throw that to me, and I used to say to him, but I'm not your mother. So, but sometimes when he came home at midnight, you know, I would surprise him, I would be sexy for him sometimes, and things like that he loved. So, like I said, a lot of things I realized I did wrong in a marriage, and I always said if I were to get remarried or was by listen, God can do anything. So I'm going to say, somebody try some strange, because I really believe that the marriage is over. And he said, you know, we've had a conversation. He said, Evelyn, the marriage is over. You know? And when we first separated, I said some hurtful things to him. I'm talking about hurt. And at that time, I think that was the hurt that I felt I was going through. I lashed out on him. And I'd apologize to him because, you know what? I was wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I was so wrong. But again, I would tell persons, if you're going through, trust God. Continue to ask God for help, because only God can save. I couldn't save my marriage. He couldn't save his marriage.
Yeah.
Only God could have saved that marriage. And at that time, none of us looked to God. We looked to each other.
Yeah.
Both of us were broken. But I think this, even though it's 7 years, I've grown in so many ways. Because forgiveness, oh wow. I had to learn to forgive myself, and then I had to learn to forgive him. And even with growing up, I felt as if I grew up with my boys. Because when he left, when I left, my baby was, I think she was about 1, a little over 1, or almost 1, something like that. The oldest boy, he would have been maybe 19, 20. And then the last boy, he would have been about 11, 12. So at that time when I left, I was selfish, and I didn't care who said I was selfish. I was selfish. I was doing me. I was loving me. And I did it the wrong way, because I took away from my boys their father. He was verbally abusive to a point, but was never physical as per se. So it wasn't as if, well, we were in danger. And when he came home, he drank. So sometimes he'd come home and he would be, you know, but for the most part, out of 100, I'd say he was about 80% a good husband and 90% a good father.
Okay.
But we're not perfect.
Yeah, I would say mine's just like 100% a good dad and 0% good.
And guess what? I was about, I'm going to be honest with you, maybe 60% a good wife, but 100% a good mom.
Yeah, I can give myself the reading. Because I look like I'm a little biased.
No, I try to be as honest as I can, because, like I said, he wasn't all bad, and I definitely wasn't all good.
Yeah.
Especially the ending part of the marriage. I often tell people, women leave a relationship or a marriage mentally first.
Yep.
And then, however long it takes, they leave physically.
Yeah.
But we if you see me walk out of a house, out of a marital home, whatever the case may be, a relationship, we've left that relationship a long time.
Long time. Like I am one who left my brand new house.
Wow.
Like
I remember it.
Yeah,
It was so beautiful.
I literally had just built a home, and I lived in my house for 9 months.
Wow.
And I was like, buddy, this ain't even worth it. This ain't. Let me tell you something. You know, what really like was something that I was taught during this entire process, because we have this stigma, you know, where it's like, you gotta get your house, you gotta get married, you gotta get a house, you have to get, you know, a child, and you need probably like a government job or something like that. They find that to be like the Bahamian dream.
Yes.
And I was one of those people that had it all.
Wow.
And I was the most miserable I've ever been in my life. I had spent every dime, every dollar I had building this beautiful home, and building this beautiful house.
Yes, it's a difference.
And it never
became
felt like home.
Wow.
Never felt like home. And I'm like, now I have a new perspective on life. You know, God had to really show me, like, Tracy, you had plenty idols.
Yes.
Like, you found you lost your identity in the marriage, in the position at your work, in the home. Like, you thought you were who you was with and what you had.
I remember, because one of the reasons why I kind of beat myself up, because I was the one that I didn't fight, because at that time when it first started, I was deep in the church. I was a prayer warrior, and I think that because the enemy knew that he couldn't touch anything other than my marriage, and I was so comfortable to the point that I was so secure. I didn't even realize when the enemy snuck in until it was too late. And I remember my husband, he said to me, after the fact, he said, Evelyn, he said, I took you for granted. And I asked him, I said, how? And I remember he gave 2 examples. And for some reason, he always loved my back. So I would, when I bought clothes, dress or blouse, I always bought them.
Like a back out.
Right, to show my back.
Sexy.
And so I remember I called him one day, I said, where are you? So he said, hey, me, George, and we're by Fish Fry, or whatever. So I said, okay. So I got dressed, I got sexy, I wore this dress that I knew he loved. And I went there, I said, hey, I'm here. So he looked at me and said, oh, you look nice, you going out? I said, no, I just came to say hi. He said, oh, okay, we're just chilling, I guess I'll talk to you later. And I left. And I felt so hurt. And that was one of the incidents he brought back to me. And I reminded him, I said, I got dressed just for you.
Just for you.
Just to say hi to you. And then another time I was cleaning up on a Saturday. And because I know, he said, hey, I'm going right around the corner to one of his boys. They always have something on Saturdays. I will never forget this, a white blouse, of course with a back out, and a nice long jeans. Went there, and he said practically the same thing.
Yeah.
So when I went there, one of the guys said, hey, wifey, you want something to drink? So he's like, no, she don't drink. Just get her vitamins or something. And so I got the vitamin. He said, you going somewhere? I said, no, I just came to hail you. He said, oh, okay, I could be until XYZ. You know, and I went home and I laid on my bed and I cried. And I asked him, I said, you don't find me attractive?
Oh, man.
I said, because you don't take me anywhere anymore. And he was like, no. And I think, and when he reminded me of that time.
Yeah.
And I said to him, when he reminded me, I said, why don't you do anything? And you know what he said? Evelyn, I took you for granted. I never expected you to leave. And I think, because when we had arguments, I would leave. 2 days I was back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, they were small, whatever. So I think the fact that I left and I never went back, even after he begged, it was an eye-opener.
Yeah.
But life goes on.
Yeah.
We move on.
I think that's something that we should all take into consideration. To always listen to me. I don't think we understand how important admiration is to each other.
Yes.
And compliments, you know what I mean? Words of affirmation.
Yes.
Like, I was in that same boat, and I knew what it was to come home, put on lingerie and all that stuff, and then they don't look at you. You know, but at the end of the day, you know, those are the things that I've learned from them, and I've learned too that, okay, so when that time comes for me to, you know, be in another relationship, these are the things that I could say, listen,
Yes.
these are my deal makers and breakers. I need words of affirmation. I need you to compliment me. I am a woman. I need affection. I need love. I need attention. You know, I want to feel wanted.
Yes.
You know, and even when, you know, I tell people, like, we gotta make sure we're actually friends too.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that was like a big issue with me and my ex. We weren't saved when we got married. We used to go to church, but trust me when I tell you we wasn't saved. and I didn't understand how important it was to have a friendship, because I feel like our relationship got physical real quick. And we tried to build a foundation on that. And that was a foundation that came crumbling down.
I agree, because guess what? When I met Ronaldo, first of all, I couldn't stand him. Because we were both working at the airport, and there was an incident at the airport, whereas with myself, him, and I could not stand him. And it was at that time when he said, "Oh, she's a little sexy. She's just how I like it." And then I had a friend who was dating one of his friends. So that's how we got hooked up. And I'm like, why in the world she don't carry me home? I want to go home. I don't want to talk to anybody. And I remember it was that January, I think it was like the ending of January, we started to talk. But we were friends. You know,
Yes.
that we got to find out each other's backgrounds and all these things. So we built on that. Even though it moved fast, but we I tell you, listen, we were best friends in the relationship until it got to that point, whereas I started to pick on everything, and he just started to get me upset. But even before that, when we were good, I remember he always said, "Evelyn, as long as you be whatever I need you to be," and I look at him and was like, "What?" So he was like, I don't have a need to go and have another woman." And so I was like, okay. And I told him, I said, explain. Right. And he was like, because sometimes he was like, hey, surprise me, you know. And listen, we had an awesome intimate life. We had an awesome sex life. But sometimes it got, like, in the end, it got a little, listen, yeah, don't touch me. That's when I started to leave the marriage. And I started to pick on everything. And I started to fault him for everything, no matter what it was, no matter how small. And mind you, in the end, things got really, really good when I was pregnant. We found out it was a girl. And I've listened to me, I must say. When I had her, he took 12 weeks off, vacation. And the first week that I had her, that was his last week to work.
Wow.
And if she said, meh, he got out. She never slept in her crib because she had like slight breathing issues a few times. I had her in the crib. So he said, do not put my daughter in this crib. So she slept on his chest from that time until we left. She slept. Listen to me, Tracy. This may sound crazy. There was a song that he sang to her, "You Are So Beautiful." The only time she would have heard that song was when he sang it to her.
Wow.
And I remember one time he always rocked her in his hands like this. And the last boy came, and she was about 7 or 8 months at this time. And the last boy came right in front of him, and she at 8 months she pushed him away. So it's like, no man, this can't be real. He said, come here, let me see something. And I laid across on his lap, and she pushed me.
Territorial.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And when she became like 2 and 3, and she was like, daddy, sing a song. And she sang the song, and I just thought that was so amazing. So he was an awesome father, and at that time he was the perfect husband. I'm talking about getting up through, I was saying, now you have work in the morning or you have work tonight. I'll deal with it. No, Evelyn, I got up.
Lord, send them, please. The next one, please.
So this last week of work and the first like 2 weeks of vacation, perfect. But after he said me start getting up and doing things, he went back to I'm telling you, he went back to hike the cities to pick up, drop the kids to school. At that time, no, I don't think the oldest two boys, I don't think they were in school, but the last set of boys that were in school, he got up and he fixed breakfast, he dropped them to school, he came home lunchtime, he made sure that I had my food, whatever it was I wanted, he picked them up, he cleaned, he did everything. But you know me, I always felt as if I was a superwoman. Honestly, I did. So when you see we went out to drop the boys. Like I started to get up and do little things. And at first he's like, Evelyn, what you doing? You just had baby. So I said, you know what? So after that 2 weeks was up, we decided to go out. It just went back to normal. Yeah. You know? But my closing, and guess what? My book is on Amazon. It's for $20 and it's not a long read, it's not a boring read, it's not fine print. It's a good size, so I can guarantee you that.
Yo, that's not so sweet. That ain't me.
I can guarantee you guys that you're gonna love it and you're gonna take something from it. So my last few words: put God first and keep the church. And guess what? Family out of your marriage. Yes, because you and your husband, we had problems. And let's just say if I went to my mom and I told her about it, she developed a negative attitude towards him. So when he and I were back,
she's still not.
Exactly. So it got to a point where, at a point in time, I had to say, hey, that's my husband, leave it alone. Yeah, I had to. But
we live and we learn.
Yes, we do.
Awesome. And so, all right. So this has been absolutely amazing.
Yes,
thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate it so much. So where can we find Out of the Pockets of Pain?
My book is on Amazon for $20, and then I'm having a book launch around December 14th, 15th, so that weekend, either the weekend before or the weekend after, but I will definitely keep you posted. But I just want to read the last 2 paragraphs of my book.
Please.
It says, I've truly learned the purpose behind my pain. I realized that the pain that I was experiencing left only when the lesson was learned. Pastor John Gray once said that pain connects, adjusts, and prepares us for the life that God has purpose for us. The uneasiness with hurt and pain is that God is maturing, elevating, building, and raising us. Even though I am still in my process, my relationship with God had put me in that place of great confidence in the fact that I serve an omnipotent, all-knowing God who has never failed and will never fail. My faith walk has been increased as I am in great expectations of what God is doing and about to do. Hebrews 11:6 says, but without faith it is impossible to please God. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is the rewarder of them that diligently seek him. As I rest in my storms, I have realized that God will not waste my pain. So that's the end of my book. Keep in mind that this book was written when my daughter was 4 years old. She's now 8. So yeah. And I do say stay tuned for part 2. Mind you, I have the name of my book. It's on the outside looking in. But I don't have the first line yet.
Don't worry, we both know, when it comes to divine inspiration, God will just do it because I never in my life thought I'd write a book. Let me tell you something.
Neither have I.
But, God has his way of, where the Revelation says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. So there's always a story that needs to be told because it helps someone somewhere that may be experiencing the same thing, experiencing divorce or separation, or whatever type of relational, trauma that they may be going through. I pray that your book reaches many, 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 many lives, and I wish you the best of success with it. So y'all, that was episode 5. 5. And like I tell you all, like, subscribe, and share. Please, for me. Be a part of the Purpose Sisters family, all right? I love you. God bless you. Bye.
Goodbye.